Welcome to this ESP tutorial on the formation and organisation of groups on the system. The functions we're going to cover in this tutorial are available through the Setup menu and by clicking the Groups button shown here in green. In order to explain this screen, we're first going to have to define two terms. These are entity and tier. In this case, the term entity refers to the collective name for any group or individual, i.e. student, teacher, class, year group, key stage, are all examples of different entities. In this system, we use the term tier to describe the organisational level of that particular entity. So an individual is tier 1, any groups of individuals such as a class are tier 2, and so on. So the first job we're going to show you is how to create another entity. So as well as classes, in this case we're also going to have forms. So if I enter the term form into this text box here, you can see that when I click the drop down box below, the new term has now been included. We can now start to create some individual groups of that particular type. So now I'm going to enter a new form, in this case it's called B01, and because the form name has digits in it, the system asks if it's part of a sequence. In this case it's B1 to B12. By clicking the Include button here, the system will now create all of the groups from B1 to B12. So here you can see our list of forms that are formed in this left-hand column. The next column is for the next tier up. So for example, you might have a year group, which is a collection of classes, or a house possibly that is a collection of form groups. So here we are creating some new year groups to put into the system. And then in turn some key stages, which are the next tier on. Clicking our Edit Members button here on the bottom left-hand corner allows us to correct any mistakes we may have made in the setup, because we can switch groups from one entity to another. So if we click on our classes here, we can see that we've got our list of groups or forms. This page allows us to change which entity a group belongs to. It works by using a temporary unattached listing as shown here on the right hand side. When we click on any of the entities on the list, it shows us all of the members in the middle column. We can then select the one we wish to transfer, move it to the unattached column by using the arrow buttons. Then we simply select the entity we wish to transfer the member to. Then we can transfer the group to its new listing. If we return to the group creation page, we can take a look at our next function, which is the ability to rename or delete any of the entities. Please be aware that removing any of the entities will also remove all of its members. We can rename an entity though. If we didn't want to use the term class, for example, we could select it here, enter a new name such as group, and then click the rename button. When we then return to our previous page, we can see that the entity has been changed in the drop down box. Clicking on the green Next Window button takes us to our next set of functions, and this is where we create the list of members for each group. As with many of the functions in ESP, this can either be done manually or using a bulk method using a CSV file. The manual method involves selecting the parent entity from the first drop down box, then selecting the group name from the second, then the entity type of the members in this third box here. So in this case we have a year group called Year 9, which is a collection of teaching groups. So far in our data set, the system has selected 5 current members and 12 potential members. We can then use the search boxes at the top of each list to filter the list down so we can easily find the members we wish to assign to our group. In this case, all of the teaching groups starting with the number 9 belong to the Year 9 group. We can also use this same method for assigning students to a particular teaching group. However, a faster method is to transfer this data from a spreadsheet. And so if we click our bulk button here, we can see our file interface page. And the first thing we have to do is to download the necessary files from our OneDrive account. So clicking the button at the bottom takes us through our OneDrive connection procedure. Before taking us to our file import page. If we click the Group CSV button, we can then select the file we need and click the download button here. Clicking the Load to Groups button will then return us to the file interface page. Here we can see the first line of data that's been displayed in the fields on the right. On the left are the columns that the data was taken from. So if we take a look at the Excel file that this data came from, you can see that there's a whole host of data. Now for this page to run, the system only needs two pieces of information: a means of identification and the group that they belong to. However, the system will also create new records for individuals that it doesn't recognize. And so this can be a very fast method of creating both the records for the students and the groups that they belong to. In order to process this file correctly though, we must set up the interface page so it knows where to find the information on the file. If your data file has a set of headings, then clicking the No on this radio button here forces the system to read these headings as if they were the first line of data. And this can give us a nice and easy method of lining the data up correctly. So in my file, the gender is in column G, the identity number is in H, and the group name is in column D. If your file only contains a list of names and they all belong to the same group, then you can enter that group name in this text box at the top here. Now we can switch off the header row, see our first line of data, before selecting the fact that these are classes and they're members of students. We then need to make sure that our date format is correct by selecting the correct format off the drop-down box. And then we can click Load to Database. The system will then process the file and show you any errors that were created. And there we have it, 78 records created in seconds. Which brings us to the end of our tutorial. Thanks for watching.